being held at gunpoint. I think, there was no space for pretense anymore. There's no space for kind of, oh, I've got years and years to work it out, or kind of this doesn't really matter, or, that kind of like, well, I can do this for a while. It felt like there was one moment left. And in that moment, I had to think, is this what I want my life to have been? Remember, I was still pretty young, right? And so, there's just like, no, I still want to be alive. And so often we feel very ambiguous about being alive, don't we? We feel it's a burden, it's very difficult. It seems like something that is hard to traverse. But at that moment, it's like, no, I just want to remain alive. And it's totally changed my priorities. It's also given me this sense that being alive is not to be taken for granted. It's like some kind of incredible thing. And on that basis now, what do I choose to do? Where do I want my attention to lie? And I stumbled over yoga, which I think is the most wonderful and profound thing. And probably my first experience of what we in the West might call body, mind, spirit. That sense of something really holistic, that sense of something beyond surface activity or surface possessions, and a sense of stillness and profound states of being. So when you let something go, which takes courage, and you give yourself a space in which for something else to appear, and I was just really lucky that yoga kind of came in and held me through that period of reforming and questioning. If it hadn't come in, I guess I could have ended up lost, or in some other way, like disillusioned.
So when you had that experience, sometimes we can have a profound experience, which can be life-changing at a very, very fundamental level. And then, we're back in life, we're back in the world, we're back in our home,
Yeah, good point.
we're back in central, wherever we are, right? And hopefully we take some of it with us, but we can get knocked around in that sort of real life situation. How did that stay with you? How did you help give continuity to that experience?
Yeah, I guess that's where we have to hope that conditions come to support us, to keep us going, isn't it? Like you say, you might plant a very interesting seed in soil, but if you don't continue to water it or have sunshine for it, it will die. It's uncared for, right? So these other things need to come in to help it. And I was lucky that those things came in. I think it takes time for people to become content with just kind of enough, and not to see that as a lesser way of living or some kind of sacrifice. To be comfortable with it, really comfortable with it, I think maybe takes time. Otherwise, people think it's like a reduced way of living, a lesser way of living. You know what I mean? But a lot of the franticness and the distractedness and the unhappiness seems to be linked to not being able to just be peacefully content with just a simple way of living,
Obviously, Emma, you've had a lot of change in your life. You've experienced a lot of change. And you have said change requires some courage. It takes enormous courage to step into the unknown. As we know, many people fear change, although personally I feel the essence of life implies change. There is change going on all the time, right? Whether it's of our doing or not, that is actually life, perhaps we could say. What would you say to someone who, is fearful of navigating uncertainty into the unknown?
Well, there are degrees. We have to be wise and skillful with our own being. There are degrees. I think from my experience of talking to people, that if people get to a stage of feeling very stuck, either with their own thinking, their own mental habits, or just generally their situation, they feel very disempowered and they feel like they're not really living. It's like a state of being half alive if you feel very stuck, right? And it's very disempowering. And so I think this is where choosing to do things that are helpful for you, even if they're little changes. They don't have to be big changes, but if it gives that feeling that I'm not stuck, I'm working with the nature of things. Things are changing and flowing, and I'm also growing and changing and flowing. It's just when we have this feeling that the outer world is stuck and we are stuck, then things get very, very tricky, I think. Sometimes big change may be helpful, and you may have the courage to do that, but sometimes we just need to make little changes. And a lot of the time, some people have made radical changes. It has, they've moved to the country, they've changed jobs. I don't know what. I think you have to have some self-wisdom, maybe in a quiet time, just to think, okay, is this a time to make a small change? And if so, what? Is it a time to make a medium-sized change? Or is it time to make a big change? But for some people, making a big change will give a feeling of fear. And so then you respect that and make
so it's
a
following
medium-sized
intuition
change,
as well, isn't it, really? Sitting with yourself.
I think we are, yeah. And if you can, I think that usually gives a feeling of trust, that you can rely on your own wisdom. Nobody else can quite tell you if the size of the change. I think it's good if you can sense it for yourself, because it also gives you a feeling of trust in your own, walking down that path, that you can be your own best guide. And I think that's important, because often we look around find in everybody else or every book or whatever, or every teacher, what to do. Sometimes it's better to be quiet and just think and reflect, and then gently make that change.
How can people find their purpose today, in your view?
Yeah, I mean, there's a quote by Goenka, about the Buddhist teacher Goenka, Burmese teacher Goenka, about what is right livelihood. And in a way, purpose is a little bit like, what is right livelihood? What is the way to live rightly in this world? Which is one of the 8 aspects of the Noble Path. And he says, if you are taking activity which supports yourself, both supports yourself and is helping others, then you're living in a right way. And so we do have to have that balance, both recognizing that we should take care of our own being in every way, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, etc., and always be helping others. And if you can get to the end of the day and think, yeah, I gently took care of myself today, I didn't harm myself with my anger or my speech towards others, I didn't harm myself in that way, and I helped others, then you can rest easy knowing that, that is the purpose. There is no other purpose. Because sometimes you can search for purpose here, there, and everywhere. But I think for me anyway, I don't know how it sounds to you, Dee, but in that simple way, I think that
totally, it's what you said is very beautiful
area.
And very simple and very profound. And I think we can overcomplicate and almost have a roadblock because we're looking for some bigger story. But it's a life choice. It's a day-to-day choice, isn't it? It's a minute-to-minute walking down a certain road with a certain approach and a certain philosophy, which is intrinsic to who we are as human beings. It's about, the inside reflecting the outside as well. Thanks for listening to this episode of Double Espresso with Dee, with me, Dee Sterling. If you enjoyed it, I'd love you to review and subscribe to the podcast so we can share these amazing stories with others. I'd also love to connect with you, so feel free to contact me via Instagram DM at @D_Espresso. Until the next time, au revoir.